People don't understand what it's like to be sick. Being negative only makes a journey more difficult. I tell my family all the time, they have a much harder job than me. Watching someone you love suffer, knowing there is absolutely nothing you can do, is probably the most unimaginable fate.
When I've been at my hardest times, I just think about her, and it gives me strength.
By the way she's dealing with it, it helps us deal with it better.
We're an orphan disease. You know, you say the word Scleroderma and someone's like, oh, I've never heard of it. By sharing your story, you are changing the world. And it's not always a pretty story, and it doesn't always have a happy ending. I hope that it will bring us closer to a better quality of life for patients. Dear Scleroderma, growing up in a small town, I never had many worries. So, I grew up like on a little farmhouse. Like there was like a Dairy Gold barn, and then just like a big farmhouse actually down the street. I grew up next to my grandparents as well. They had an ostrich farm, so kids had dogs and I had an ostrich.
It was just a very family-oriented growing up. We owned a gymnastics school, so there was always kids around.
I was really dedicated to both gymnastics and choir.
She was a good swimmer, she was a great singer. Everything she did, she was just good at. She always wanted to be everybody's best friend. She was always trying to help other people, even as a little kid.
From a young age, I wanted to find fulfillment. I always wanted to be busy and I wanted a purpose. As I grew, I became a spitfire of a woman, ready to take charge of every situation and headstrong enough to take on the world. A world in which I didn't know of your existence.
She wasn't in school getting straight A's and being honor roll. She was at work making her own way.
As a teenager, I wasn't kind of part of any clique or subgroup. I wanted to be around people. I liked people. Noel and I have been together for 7 years now.
Me and Chanel had always been going to the same parks and the same places, the same locations, but never met until our senior year.
It was one of those things where neither of us had a date to homecoming, and his group of friends set him up with me and my group of friends set me up with him, and we just hit it off.
She's very strong-willed and she's very beautiful, and she's very energetic and very outgoing.
The rest is history, right? Super cheesy, but totally true.
Me and Chanel got married when we were 19, almost 20.
We knew there was nobody else we were ever going to want. So I ended up going to the jeweler after the honeymoon, and we sized up my ring almost 2 full sizes. And they were the lady, I gave it to her and she's like, that's kind of odd, because she had seen me. I was the exact same weight as when I came in. I just went up full 2 ring sizes. I didn't think much of it at the time.
She called me one time and was telling me that she was having some issues with her scalp. And I said, well, did you change your shampoo? And she's like, yeah, I did. And I said, you probably just have a rash from changing your shampoo. Don't change anything, don't do anything different.
And I thought, okay, maybe I'm just stressed out, I'm doing a lot right now. I was taking showers and just pulling out chunks of my hair. And I was tired all the time. And, I just remember thinking, this probably isn't good.
There's something deeper than what is on the surface.
And she's been misdiagnosed so many times.
And eventually they sent me to a rheumatologist after waiting for a bit. Within 10 seconds of walking into that room, he looked at me and looked at my hands and knew exactly what I had. And he had to explain to me that, once this disease reaches particular organs, you don't live long. My mind went numb.
I'd heard the word Scleroderma 30 years ago. But when the rheumatologist said, you know, she has this and it involves scleroderma, I lost my knees. I just fell to the ground.
It was very surreal. And the weirder part was, you know, he ran all the blood work, convinced that I had scleroderma, which was true, but I tested positive for all these other illnesses. You know, so I get the call. Not only did we confirm scleroderma, but you also have polymyositis and you have lupus and, you know, all these other things that were confirming, you know, my worry when I was having these symptoms that I pushed to the back of my mind.
Yeah. It is really tough. Yeah, it's hard to see your daughter grow up so energetic and happy. Then see this happen.
The fear consumed me. I mean, it is every parent's worst nightmare to have their child not only be ill, but be ill with something that has no cure.
He told me before I left, the first 5 years will dictate your prognosis. And I, to be honest, brushed it off. I was like, okay, like, I'm sure it'll be okay. Like, you know, I won't be that case that he's talking about with the organ damage. I won't be that person. And I turned out to be that person in the express lane.
I remember getting the call at work, and Chanel said there's evidence that it's in my lungs and my other organs. We don't know how extreme, but we'll go from there.
Your company left me searching for value in a world that said people like me were burdens. I had a future planned out. I was one of those people that had a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C, and then I had a backup for when those plans failed. And I had to accept my circumstance, surrender to it, and then make adjustments and, you know, find that new shore. I still managed to gain an online degree and have a brief glimpse into the life I might have had without you. I became a teacher and helped young minds soak up the world around them. It turned out the teaching was just something like I was innately born to do. And my teaching career just took off. That was how I felt I contributed to society. That was how I felt I made a difference in the world. My students found the tubes you gave me exciting and met them with no judgment. Their innocent minds helped me to embrace my fate. Eventually, you stole them from me too. I could deal with the medical devices, I could deal with not eating, but like it taking what I worked for years to attain and taking the students who would tell me they loved me every day, that was hard. That was really hard. In all reality, I had pretty bad medical PTSD as well as the depression, and I refused to get off my couch. I cried every day. I woke up screaming at night from nightmares every night. Over time, I realized happiness could not be found if I was basing it off things I had already lost. I learned to let go of self-imposed expectations and suddenly found immense happiness in life with you. I wanted everyone to know that this was possible. And so I began to share my story. A story about a girl living her life with disease. I'm already in an extremely horrible situation. Why would I want to self-inflict more horrible situation by complaining and by bringing my attitude down along with my body? And that's when I started blogging. That's when I really heavily started writing. And it turned into like, I don't even know how to describe it, just this outpouring of my soul onto my computer. And for some reason, it wasn't just my family that was interested.
I often have thought, you know, if it was going to happen, thank goodness it happened in this day and age, because I can't imagine going through something like this in the days where you couldn't reach out and find other people that were like you, the people that don't normally have a voice. She's made a big voice for them, and I couldn't be more proud.
She's actually put forth a better understanding to most people. She's explaining to them how to deal with it as well as what it is.
I suddenly was contributing to society again. Within a year, I was doing a YouTube channel and an Instagram and a Twitter and freelance writing and, Facebook, and my videos were getting, 5 million views. And I could not comprehend at the time what that meant. And I suddenly realized, that's an abnormal thing in this world. People don't just share their sometimes gory reality.
I have nerve disorders. I don't have scleroderma. She writes these things that I identify and that I could see another friend identifying with if I don't. She's constantly opening dialogues. Instead of saying, this is happening to me, oh my gosh, this is horrible, she'll pose a question. Hey, people with ports, did this happen to you? Do you know why? How did you fix it? She has a larger purpose than helping people with scleroderma. She helps people who have to adjust to a new normal. It's not like, if Chanel can do it, I can do it, or Chanel's struggles are worse than mine, so I'm having a better day. It's more like, well, that principle makes sense, so why can't I apply that to my life?
You can find joy in illness, and you can create happiness in illness. I dress up my tank at Christmas. I turned it into a tree with a star, and I put lights on it, and I draw a turkey on my feeding tube bag at Thanksgiving. I create the happiness, but I physically have to create it. It's not something that's just gonna find me in this circumstance. Don't sit around and wait for your happiness. Don't wait for your miracle. I'm not saying there's no such thing as miracles, but what I'm saying is don't wait for it. Because the 10 years that you're waiting and you finally get it, you just wasted 10 years when you could have been out doing something incredible. I think that advocating and sharing my story and bringing awareness to not only scleroderma, but anyone battling disease is 100% my purpose in life. The people that I've met and the connections I've made, the friendships that I've formed, the people that have told me that because of a quote I shared or something that a picture that I showed of something I adapted to make my life more enjoyable, changed their perspective on their life, is probably the most rewarding thing I've ever felt. It's incredible to know that these people were alone and they were going through this battle thinking that they were just in solitary confinement, and that by me simply sharing my story, they suddenly realized there's a whole world out there, is just awe-inspiring. My joy in illness is knowing that I can empower another patient to live life in their circumstance, to live life with disease instead of in spite of disease. My doctor, after I had failed 9 months of very intensive chemo, just looked at me and said, we've got one last shot. It's a clinical trial, and there is no guarantee you'll even survive. They can't make any promises, but at this point, it's better than not doing anything, because I know my outcome if I do nothing. I'm really looking forward to the possibility of what this treatment could hold, what it could mean for me, the life it could give me. Best case scenario, I get off oxygen in a feeding tube. Worst case scenario, is obviously death. Even if I can get 5 good years after this treatment, that's worth it, because I don't have 5 good years right now. I'm terrified and excited, and I just hope that this will be my miracle. I'm not counting on it, but I'm hoping. I'm really hoping. Thank you, Scleroderma. Thank you for making me Scleroderma strong.